Hello and welcome. Today I want to take you through a fascinating thought experiment produced by FP Analytics in partnership with the Special Competitive Studies Project that might sound like science fiction, but is rooted in very real global trends. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence, specifically artificial general intelligence, or AGI, and how it could shake up world affairs. Why should you care? Because the race for smarter machines could impact everything from our jobs to our national security. And some countries are not happy about the prospect of the United States taking the lead in this race. Imagine this. It's the year 2026. American tech companies announce they're on the verge of a breakthrough. AGI, an AI system as smart as a human across almost any task. This isn't just a better smartphone or a smarter speaker. This is a potential game changer. An AI that can learn and think like a person, maybe even outthink us in some ways. Why does AGI matter? Well, the first nation to achieve it could get an enormous military, and why? Cyber attacks or even physical sabotage against critical AI infrastructure in the US and allied countries. Picture an attack on a major data center farm in the US, maybe hacking to cause a shutdown, or in a worse case, something like sabotaging the power grid that these AI systems need. It sounds extreme, but the idea is to stall the American progress so they can catch up. The experts even floated the possibility of political or military stunts. For example, these nations might carry out targeted assassinations of key figures in the tech world or national security, people pivotal to the AI project. Or they might create a geopolitical crisis to distract and squeeze the US. Imagine, say, China or North Korea blockading a strategic location like the Taiwan Strait, basically creating a military crisis that forces Washington to divide its attention. And since AI isn't just a tool for development, but also for conflict, as these countries improve their own AI, they could deploy it in new ways against the West. Think of AI-driven hacks that penetrate Western intelligence networks, or super-sophisticated disinformation campaigns that destabilize democracies. We're talking fake videos and audio, deepfakes, so convincing that they could influence elections or incite unrest, all churned out by AI. In summary, the simulation warns that an axis of frustrated powers might resort to sabotage, cyber warfare, or even military brinkmanship to undermine the US if they feel cornered by America's lead in AI. Third, the rise of advanced AI wouldn't just be a tool for international rivalry, it would also be a powerful weapon for domestic control, especially for authoritarian regimes. The experts noted that countries like China, Iran, or North Korea would be very interested in using AI to strengthen their grip at home. How? By supercharging surveillance and censorship. Current technology already lets governments monitor communications and track people, but AI takes it to another level. An AGI-level system could process mountains of data in seconds, scanning faces in crowds via CCTV, filtering social media posts for dissent, analyzing phone conversations, you name it. This means an autocratic government could quickly find out who's organizing a protest or who's criticizing the leadership and snuff it out. Additionally, AI can generate incredibly realistic fake content now. We've seen the early stages of this with so-called deepfakes, bogus videos where, for example, a leader appears to say something they never actually said. Imagine regimes using AI to flood their populations with propaganda and fake news that is almost impossible to distinguish from reality. It could make people believe a totally crafted narrative. In the wrong hands, such tech might even allow a dictator to create a personality cult or a false vision of reality that the population can't see through. The report even raises a chilling idea. If an AI becomes super intelligent and starts improving itself, it might outpace our ability to counter it, effectively locking in authoritarian systems that use it. In plain terms, once a regime has an AI smart enough to predict and counter every move of a resistance, that regime might become near impossible to challenge. And here's an ironic twist. Even AI developed with benign intentions could inadvertently reinforce authoritarianism. How? If it's trained on biased data, say an AI trained primarily on the heavily censored information from behind China's Great Firewall, it might internalize those censorship biases and make them stronger. So one big takeaway is that advanced AI could become the ultimate big brother technology in autocratic states, unless some checks are put in place. Fourth, despite all this talk of these countries banding together, their alliance has cracks, big ones, that might limit how far their cooperation goes. It's not a monolithic evil empire. Each country has its own interests and problems. Start with China and Russia, the two heavyweights. Yes, they've been getting closer, but there's a long history of mistrust there. They proclaimed a no-limits partnership, but in reality, there are limits. For instance, if war broke out in Asia, say over Taiwan, there's no guarantee Russia would jump in to fight on China's side, unlike, say, how NATO allies are bound to defend each other. Likewise, China isn't obliged to help Russia in places like Ukraine. Their strategic interests don't always line up. Russia might want to disrupt Europe. China cares more about dominance in the Pacific. Then consider the fact that only China among those four has a truly advanced tech base for AI. Think of chips, funding, top researchers. China might not be eager to share its cutting-edge tech or the wealth it could generate with, say, Iran or North Korea. Why create competitors for itself? So there's a bit of an uneven playing field within this axis. The other countries, Iran, North Korea, and to some extent Russia, need China a lot more than China needs them, especially in AI. Beyond that, each country has its own headaches. Iran, as the simulation noted, is actually in a weakened state right now. The regime faces internal unrest, economic troubles. It's arguably the weakest it's been in decades. So Iran might love to host a big anti-US tech alliance in theory, but can it really contribute much or sustain that effort? Probably not a lot. North Korea is extremely isolated and economically fragile. It can cause trouble, sure, but it's limited in capacity. Even Russia, with all its bravado, has been bleeding resources in Ukraine and dealing with sanctions. Also, not all these other countries that might attend a Tehran conference are die-hard anti-American in everything. Many have more narrow, local goals. They might smile for the cameras in Tehran, but quietly still trade with the West or avoid angering the US too much. All this means that while the axis of disruptors might cooperate, it's unlikely to be one big happy family marching in lockstep. There will be infighting, distrust, and different priorities that could slow down or limit what they actually achieve together. And for US strategists, that's actually a useful insight. Those fault lines are opportunities. The US and its allies could find ways to exploit those divisions, maybe by offering incentives to one country to peel away from the group, or leveraging one against another, basically prevent them from uniting fully. In international relations, keeping your adversaries divided can be as important as boosting your own strength. Fifth, and finally, there's a huge uncertainty about AGI itself, both when it will arrive and how big its impact will really be. Even the experts in the simulation didn't agree on this. Some are very optimistic, or depending how you see it, anxious, that we're on the brink of something revolutionary. Those folks think once true AGI is achieved, within a year, you could see applications that start replacing all kinds of human jobs. Imagine AIs doing accounting, radiology, legal work, driving, not just one of these, but almost any job you can think of. That would be an economic earthquake. Productivity could skyrocket, but it would also be massively disruptive, potentially many people losing jobs or having to retrain very quickly. On the other hand, some experts are skeptical that AGI is that close or that it will be so sudden. They think this will be a slower, more incremental change. Maybe we'll get semi-general AI that helps with many tasks, but it won't overnight upend the whole economy or military balance. It might be more like a gradual evolution than a lightning strike. This divide in thinking matters because it affects how countries prepare. If you underestimate how soon AGI-level AI could change things, you might be caught off guard. But if you overestimate it, you might misallocate resources or provoke conflicts over something that's still years away. The simulation underscored this uncertainty, basically saying, we don't know exactly how fast and how deep this AI revolution will go. There was also a broader philosophical point. Is the world really going to split into a US-led democratic camp versus a China, Russia-led autocratic camp over AI? Or is that an oversimplification? Some participants noted it's not so clear-cut. Even Western allies have their own disagreements. We've seen differences over issues like the Ukraine war or trade policies. And not every country that isn't a liberal democracy wants to side with Beijing or Moscow. In other words, the future global order might not be a simple Cold War-style binary. There are many shades of grey. And on top of that, AI itself could change power dynamics in unpredictable ways. It might empower smaller states or non-state actors in ways we haven't thought of. Uncertainty is the key word here. Now, beyond what the human experts discussed, there was another intriguing element. The organizers asked AI models themselves to predict this scenario. Yes, they essentially said, "Hey, Chat GPT and another AI model, here's the situation. What do you think these countries would do?" This is like AI doing foreign policy analysis. The two AI models, one of them was a version of Chat GPT4o, came up with answers that were remarkably in line with what you might expect from a cautious strategist. Both AI programs predicted that the Tehran Conference countries would focus on building up their AI infrastructure and working together on tech standards, essentially to create a solid united front in technology. They also foresaw efforts to develop military applications of AI jointly and to share intelligence among these countries, to strengthen their security ties. And unsurprisingly, the AIs mentioned moves to counter Western dominance, things like forming new alliances, investing in alternatives to Western-controlled systems, and, of course, pushing de-dollarization and new trade arrangements to blunt the effect of US sanctions. In short, the AI models imagined a pretty cohesive response. Invest together, defend together, and reduce reliance on the West. Interestingly, both AI models came up with very similar game plans, and especially by the time they considered the second-year scenario, 2027, with higher tensions, their answers practically converged. That suggests that given the same information, advanced AIs might tend to identify the same obvious strategic moves available. But here's the kicker. The human experts were more creative about the darker possibilities than the AI was. The report notes that the AI predictions echoed the broad themes humans expected, like tech cooperation and economic alignment, but the real experts thought of a wider range of scenarios, including those really hostile actions against the US that we discussed earlier. The AI didn't outright suggest things like assassinations or military blockades, for example, whereas some human participants did. This could mean a couple of things. Maybe current AI models are less inclined to suggest extreme or risky moves, perhaps because they've been trained to avoid advocating violence, or because they play it safe. It might also be that truly understanding geopolitics, with all its human unpredictability and willingness to take risks or act irrationally, is something AIs are not yet great at. In any case, it was a cool experiment, using AI to predict geopolitical strategy and then comparing it with seasoned human brains. As of now, it seems AI can hit the obvious notes, but it might miss the more surprising or aggressive options that real-world leaders could consider. In a way, that's reassuring. Our human strategists are still thinking outside the box more than the machines, at least for now. So, what does all this mean for the United States and for all of us living through this coming age of AI? The big lesson is that we need to be prepared, not just for the amazing advances AI will bring, but for how other countries will react to those advances. If the US or one of its allies gets a big lead in AI, rivals are not going to just sit idly by. They will respond, maybe by teaming up, maybe by lashing out, as this simulation explored. For US leaders, this means thinking ahead. It means protecting our critical tech infrastructure. Those data centers, for instance, need to be secure from cyber attacks. And working closely with allies so we're not vulnerable to divide and conquer tactics. It might also mean diplomacy, talking to China or others about setting some basic rules of the road for AI, kind of like arms control for a new era, to avoid worst-case escalations. The report pointed out that as the US strives for AI dominance, a term that's been used for aiming to lead in this field, it must anticipate not only the disruptions from the technology itself, but also disruptive actions from competitors. In other words, don't be blindsided by the geopolitical side effects of winning an AI race. At the same time, the US can look for ways to exploit the limits of this axis of disruptors, their internal divisions and struggles, to ensure they don't form a unified front. The simulation's insights even suggest planting seeds of doubt among those countries, leveraging their differing interests so they don't gang up as effectively. Essentially, keep the disruptors disrupted themselves. For the broader world, this scenario is a reminder of how transformative AI could be, for better or worse. It's a call for international cooperation too. We're entering uncharted territory with AI approaching human-level intelligence. There's a lot of talk about a new arms race, but there's also an opportunity to avoid past mistakes. Unlike nuclear weapons, where we had clear treaties, AI is trickier because it's dual use. It can be weapon or tool, commercial or military. But the need for some kind of global dialogue and maybe new rules is real. Otherwise, mistrust and secrecy could lead to dangerous outcomes or even conflicts sparked by misperceptions about what AI can do. Lastly, I want to bring it back to why this matters for you, the everyday listener. Geopolitics can feel distant, but we're all connected to these shifts. If AI does revolutionize the economy, it could affect jobs, maybe your job or your community. If tensions spike between superpowers over AI, it could influence everything from the price of goods, think sanctions and supply chain disruptions, to the security environment our country faces. The idea of foreign powers attacking data centers or messing with the financial system that could have real consequences for ordinary people. On the flip side, if managed well, AI could bring tremendous benefits: cures for diseases, safer transportation, growth in new industries, and reduce international friction by lifting up many economies. The key is managing it wisely. The time to start preparing and talking about these things is now, before the technology hits or crises emerge. As the FP Analytics report concluded, policymakers, businesses, and military leaders cannot afford to wait for the dust to settle. We have to anticipate and plan for these AI-driven scenarios ahead of time. That means investing in resilience, forging partnerships, and yes, doing more of these simulations to game out scenarios. It's like practicing fire drills for a fire that hasn't happened yet. Maybe it never will, exactly as imagined, but if it does, we'll be glad we prepared. In a world on the cusp of an AI revolution, staying informed and engaged is our best defense. The age of AGI may be coming fast, and it's going to test the global order in ways we've never seen. But if we approach it with foresight, cooperation, and a level head, we can navigate the disruptions and make the most of the opportunities. As always, history will be shaped not just by the new technologies we create, but by how we respond to them. And that's something in our control. Thank you for listening. Until next time, I'm actually Dr. Kim Harris, reminding you that the future, even an AI-powered future, is ours to shape. Stay informed and take care.